So your fish tank stinks. Well, you can either put a band-aid on it by putting something with carbon into your filter or into your aquarium, try to get some of the smell away. Or we can look at the 5 common things why your fish tank would stink and fix it the proper way so it doesn't end up turning into either more stinky or disease or loss of your fish. The number one thing is you probably have a dead fish in there. That will be the most common. Number 2 would be a snail. Snails stink like crazy. A dead snail in there. So first thing you have to do, you might not know or see the dead fish. It might be hiding underneath the decoration or something like that. Whatever you do, like move all the decoration around, look for something that's dead in there and fish it out of there ASAP. If you don't do that, what's going to happen, and that's where your carbon filter is not going to help you there, is that the dead fish is going to decompose in there and it's going to create an ammonia spike and it's going to bring some more death into your aquarium or diseases from the fish rotting in there or the snail or whatever, right? So you need to remove that. And one thing that you can tell is that the ammonia or anything starting to spike in your tank is your water is gonna start turning gray and cloudy after a while. You might have like little air bubbles starting to form at the top of the edge of your water there. That's a good sign that something's dead in there and it's rotting away and creating ammonia and nitrite. So you need to remove that ASAP. After you remove the fish, do a water change. If the water is already gray and there's bubble, do at least a 50% water change into your tank. You want to remove as much of that spike as possible. You might even need to do one the next day or the day after that, depending how bad the spike was in there. But that will fix your problem. The third thing that it could be, that would be some uneaten food around the rim of your tank. So if you have uneaten food in there, or you're overfeeding and there's like way too much food stuck in the gravel, that will make the aquarium stink as well. So this step is easy. It's just aquarium maintenance, like, you know, remove the lid, wipe around with a paper towel or a sponge or something like that. No chemicals. You can use some of the water from the tank if you need to try to clean it. And then, and if it's maintenance, like vacuum your gravel or something like that, like that might be the issue too. So that uneaten food around the lid is really common. That happened to most people at the beginning. They don't know where that smell's coming from. So anyway, that's easy fix. No problem there. If you leave it there, it's gonna attract bugs, disease, other thing like that. So anyway, you need to get this out of there. Okay, so the next thing it will be a dirty filter. So a filter, the flow might not have slowed down too much, and this is because usually filter manufacturer, they make it so that if the filter sponge get plugged up or something like that, then the water flows around the basket or around wherever, and it it can still go into your tank. So even though you're seeing some water flow, it doesn't mean that the sponge is not full of goop, and after a while that can stink. So again, regular maintenance, like, you know, clean your filter whenever, like all this will depend of your stock and all that for how often you need to clean it. So, you know, light livestock, you might need to clean it once a month. EV livestock, you might need to clean it once a week. you know, just take it out once in a while. Like, and there's no such thing as over cleaning the filter as long as you're doing it properly. Like, you can even use the tap water as long as you clean it in less than like, you know, 10 seconds or something like that. Squeeze the sponge in there, no problem. Yeah, it won't kill your beneficial bacteria. So here's what I mean about the filter here. They usually have like overflow. So a filter like this, for example, if that sponge ends up being plugged up here and the water cannot come out this way going through the sponge, then it's gonna overflow over top of this part here that's made for that. So it doesn't leak all the way at the back. It's a little bit lower than the back, so water will just flow right through here. It might come on the side here too. So even if you see some water coming here, it doesn't mean that your sponge is not plugged up. Now the fifth thing, which is common mostly for beginner, that will be water flow. So if you don't have enough water movement into your tank, that will make the water stagnant, and stagnant water, you know, like go to a pond or something like that, there's always a smell to it, a swamp I mean. So, you know, it's because the water is not moving fast enough, or it's just staying there. So you want to oxygen the water. So the way you're doing that, it's either you know, you're going to have the water level a little bit underneath your filter, and then the water that comes out of your filter actually agitate the water in there and put it more full of oxygen. But that's noisy though, so personally I hate that. So what I do is I'll use some wave maker or a bubbler. Wave maker, you point that towards the surface of your tank, and then they'll agitate the water at the top. You can set it so it's not noisy, but it moves the water at the top. And then yeah, the air bubbler, usually it's not, you know, if you're a beginner you might think that like the bubble that they're going into the water is that's what oxygen the water, but it's actually breaking the seal, the top of your water. This is where the gas exchange happen, and it's actually when the bubble goes up, they burst, and then it kind of agitates the water a little bit and lets oxygen go into the water, and it lets the carbon monoxide comes out of your water. So one thing that's gonna happen usually where you're gonna notice that you don't have enough water movement into your tank is you might have a spot where there's some kind of, looks like a little bit of green algae, but it's looking a little bit more slimy. Well, this is actually bacteria that feeds on light, and it doesn't like oxygenated water. So it'll usually, like in swamp, it'll grow in swamp too. It's natural thing that happens, and so it uses photosynthesis to feed itself. But yeah, so it doesn't like water movement too much, so it'll start growing into your tank. And yeah, it's just a bacteria. It's not an algae. And then the way to remove that is just have lots of water flow, lots of oxygenation. And then yeah, that bacteria really stinks, so you'll know if that's what you're dealing with. You'll have like that odd smell into your room that won't go away. It usually doesn't take that long. So that slime, the green slime on your tank, it's called cyanobacteria, or more common blue-green algae, which is not algae at all. And the way you get rid of it is lots of water movement, create lots of oxygen in your tank, and you can close the light because it's photosynthesized, so it uses the light to feed itself. So if you close the light for a few days, you can even put a blanket on your tank so that there's actually no light going in there. Do that for like 3 or 4 days, and make sure that everything is lots of water movement, not too much dead spot in your tank here. Because if it find a dead spot where there's like no water movement there, then it's gonna grow on that spot. So you know, just add another air stone in there, or move your filter a little bit so it's more center, or add a second filter, or just add a sponge filter in that corner. Whatever you have to do to get the water moving. Sometimes too, it might be that you choose the wrong filter for the size of your tank, right? Maybe you put a filter that's rated for a 20 gallon and a 55 gallon, and it's only on one side of the tank. Well, you know, it's not enough flow to do anything to be able to get rid of that bacteria. So hopefully that video was useful to you. It helped you figure out what was wrong with your tank. I'm going to try to do a little bit of series about fixing common problem with your aquarium. So yeah, stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe.